This is a progressive tax cut. This is cutting
25 tax rises.
This is a tax cut for people of working age. In the old days, the Labour Party used to stand up for working people. It doesn't do that anymore. It's not interested in cutting taxes.
Sun readers are getting absolutely squeezed till the pipsqueak under this
Why won't you back it, Johnson?
Hello and welcome to a special local elections, never mind the ballots, with me, Harry Cole. The ballots are actually still being counted, but we'll bring you the latest on a bloody night for the Tories. Well, only one side is smiling this morning, Labour. The government are taking a pounding today as the results begin piling in and the Tories are on course to lose hundreds of their local councillors. Labour romped home in the Blackpool by-election, where the Tories only managed to avoid a humiliating third-place finish by a handful of votes. Across Brexit voting areas like Sunderland, Reform have been bashing the Tories, though handing Labour victories by doing so. But despite the headlines, there are warning signs for Labour too, as the Greens and Independents seem to be soaring in areas where large amounts of Muslim voters appear to want to punish Starmer over his perceived support for Israel. However, experts say these are the sort of gains a party on course to form a comfortable majority would be clocking up. All eyes now on whether Rishi Sunak can avoid his party having a collective breakdown as a result. Let's find out. Now, joining me are two incredibly sleep-deprived politicians. Tory party chairman Richard Holden, Labour's shadow Paymaster General John Ashworth. Guys, how much sleep have you had?
Hardly any, about an hour.
Very good. Well, thank you for joining.
Twice that much, so
lucky you.
There you go.
Richard, it's been a disastrous night for the government. It's game over, isn't it?
It's been really tough, but I think it's not game over at all. I think it's game on. We've still got a lot of election results to go. We've still got to see what's happening in the mayoralties. Still a lot of PCCs to go. 2/3 of the councils to go. Let's see until all the ballots are counted, as you said, Harry, exactly what the results end up being.
John Curtis says this is as close to catastrophic as you can get, and the worst results. Tories are on the worst results for 40 years on this part.
We're coming off very good results in 2021, where after 11 years in office, we'd gained a load of votes and a load of seats.
That's not quite true, though. This is the fifth by-election in a row that Labour have got a 20-point swing.
I'm not denying that. I'm just talking about the local elections more generally. We did have a very good result in 21, where we gained seats after 11 years in power, including places like Durham, which Labour lost for the first time in 102 years in these 2021 elections. So it looks like we're going to come off that quite a lot. But, not a good night for the Conservatives. A lot of my council colleagues have been out there campaigning with. It's going to be very tough on them as well. But we've still got some big results to go and some big challenges for Labour as part of that as well.
It's not midterm anymore. It's 5 to midnight. You've got a matter of weeks possibly or months to turn this around. The nation is clearly crying out for change. What are you going to do about it?
Well, I think what actually, let's look at a lot of the votes today. We saw Blackpool, dramatically lower turnout than we've had in a general election. Now, in the run-up to, say, 1997, you actually saw turnouts which were a lot, quite close to general election level turnouts. You saw Labour with a lower number of votes than they'd had previously.
Doesn't that worry you that your voters don't want to come out?
No, that does worry me a lot, Harry. And it also worries me that people are voting for reform, which is just another way of letting Keir Starmer into Downing Street. That's one of the reasons we're pushing so hard on our policies like the Rwanda plan to have a really effective deterrent there on the line.
All right, we'll discuss that in a minute. Sorry. John Ashworth, talking of Downing Street.
Yeah.
Your boy measuring the curtains yet?
No, most certainly not. I mean, you can tell Richard's been asleep because he doesn't quite seem to want to wake up to the hiding the Tories have had in the last 24 hours. I mean, that result in Blackpool is remarkable. It sparkles as bright as Blackpool's illuminations. The 26...
You've been practising that line, haven't you?
It is his nickname.
It's it certainly is scrappy. But a 26% swing to Labour in a seat that we absolutely have to win come a general election is a remarkable result. And I think people are saying after 14 years of the Tories, 14 years of decline and failure, that it is time for change. We've seen that in Blackpool. We've seen it in council. I mean, the garrison town of Aldershot has elected the local authority area there, Rushmore, has gone Labour. What a stunning result
Not
that
all
is.
Good news in the south, though, is it? Peterborough was a bit disappointing for Labour.
Labour gains in Peterborough.
I mean, Harlow, your leader was there, what 4 days ago?
Labour gains in Harlow, though.
Yeah,
Labour gains.
They didn't take control, did they?
No, and we'd like to have taken control.
You've had control. You did. You were in control of Harlow under Miliband and Corbyn.
But we've taken gains there in Harlow. We've taken gains in Peterborough. Gains in Plymouth. Johnny Mercer is in big trouble on those results in Plymouth tonight or last night, I should say. So important gains in key seats across Thurrock. We lost the Thurrock constituency in 2010. We've had the former Tory leader of Thurrock Council on the media this morning, putting the boot in to the Tory party. So disappointed at the loss there. Labour has made huge gains in Thurrock in these sets of results. That's really, really important.
We haven't been
us.
making gains. There is some interesting results in Newcastle, especially in Oldham. Experts saying this morning, that actually in areas of high-density Muslim populations, the Labour vote is going backwards. What do you attribute that to?
I represent an incredibly diverse part of the country. Very proud to represent Leicester, which is very diverse. And I know from speaking to my own Muslim constituents that there is hurt, there is anger, that they feel that there ought to be a greater expression in Parliament across the board for their desire to see an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, for their desire to see humanitarian relief get into Gaza, and for people to speak out on what is happening in that part of the world. So I totally understand why people are hurting.
Keir Starmer's interview was plastered across leaflets. Has he shot himself in the foot here?
It was, and that interview has, if you like, been weaponised, even though it's clear when you watch the interview that he's making a different point to the way in which it is being presented. Look, and in my own patch in Leicester, the Leicester Green Party were putting out leaflets quoting verses from the Quran, saying that you should support the Green Party because that's in tune with Islamic values. The Green Party have made a very, very direct link on using the Quran to make the case for their election in Leicester. We'll see if that's had any impact in Leicester when we get our police commissioner result later today. But I'll be interested to see if that type of leaflet has gone out in these other parts of the country.
Question for you both, and Richard, you go first, and then Johnny, exactly the same question, ideally. Why are as many former Tory voters going to Reform as they are going to Labour? You've got a big problem on your right flank, haven't you?
Look, I mean, I don't underplay the issue that we're facing. I want to address the issues and concerns that those people who are considering voting Reform
What are
have.
they? What do you think they are?
I think there are a few different areas. One is over illegal migration. They want to see...
But you've been banging on about illegal migration in Rwanda for days and weeks.
You're right, Harry, and we've got to get those flights off as quickly as we can. We've got 11 weeks now till the end of that deadline the Prime Minister set to get those flights off the ground. We're determined to do that. We've got to have that deterrent there. I think the other thing is people have obviously been hit with cost of living issues following, Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine, and also
why are they going to Reform and not Labour?
I think because I don't think they trust Labour to deal with those issues, particularly around illegal immigration. I don't think they trust them on taxation either. I think the only thing Labour about the Labour Party at the moment, the Conservative Party is out there cutting taxes for working people.
Doesn't seem to be cutting through. You keep cutting, but the polls keep going that way.
And we're also obviously protecting the incomes of people who've worked hard all their lives in retirement with their triple lock-on pensions. It's quite clear that they're not all going to Labour because there's, Keir Starmer out there on the doorsteps still isn't that popular.
Well, some of our early number crunching seems to suggest we've done better or increasing our vote share in areas where there's a high proportion of Britain's retirees because they're very concerned about the double taxation on pensions, which is coming, which is the only way to pay for their £46 billion unfunded commitment. Nigel Lawson warned back in the day when he looked at this in a memo he sent to Margaret Thatcher that we uncovered, that this would lead to pensioners being taxed twice. That's absolute nonsense. That is what Nigel Lawson said. It's in his memo.
It's absolute nonsense, the idea that we're going to do anything.
Well, how are you going to fund it then?
We have protected... We've already been very clear.
No, you haven't. Well,
actually,
clear as mud.
Actually, we have, Jonathan.
No, you haven't. Where's the 46 billion coming from?
You've just jumped in, right? We've already cut a third of national insurance. Right? That's already happened. We've said in the long term what we want to do is end the double taxation of those in work. I understand.
So double taxation on pensions?
I understand.
Instead.
No, absolutely not.
So
I've been very clear about that. No.
So you were ruling out
so I've just
an income tax rise on pensioners.
I've just literally said we're not going to double tax that.
That's it.
What I've been very clear on is that...
They've just made a new policy announcement.
No, that's absolutely not. It's quite clear that the Labour Party, right, are really scared about the fact that...
Ring the Treasury spat and see if that's the line to take. I don't think it is.
We are cutting taxes on working people. I don't understand why the Labour Party right, doesn't want to start to cut taxes for people in work.
So you're
right,
ruling
that's what we're
out,
doing.
Is that true?
You're ruling out an income tax rise on pensioners.
You voted against.
Is that what
you voted?
Let's be very clear.
I just said we're not going to raise the rates.
So let's be very clear. You're not increasing. Pensioners not going to pay more income tax.
And we've also, and I'll tell you something else we're going to do for pensioners. We're also going to keep the triple lock. So when Jonathan was in
Labour
government,
going to keep the triple
when
lock?
Jonathan was in government,
Labour going to put up income tax?
Sorry?
Labour going to put up income tax?
We have. Hang on a minute. Hang on. We have. Rachel Reeves has made it very clear what our position is on income tax. We're not increasing the rates of income tax. But under your plan, under your plan, right, to fund your £46 billion.
No, Jonathan,
you have to put up tax on
Jonathan,
pensioners.
you're putting words in our mouth. We've been very clear that we'll only cut taxes when the financial position allows. That's why we've already cut 4% off the basic rate for national insurance. That's really important. That's what putting money directly into workers' pockets.
People want to know where the 46 billion is coming from.
What I want to understand is, Jonathan starts to float figures around, right? But the truth is, we've put these tax cuts through for working people, and in the long term, we want to abolish the double tax.
People are getting hammered on.
I don't understand why
the tax burden is the highest since the war.
I don't understand why Labour won't haven't backed our tax cuts for working people.
Isn't
this
46 billion thing, is this just a bit of revenge for the 28 billion thing? You're using exactly the same lines to attack this as the Tories used to attack yours. But you didn't really have answers on that.
It's not remotely that. They have made a commitment to abolish national insurance.
Over time.
That commitment costs £46 billion. It means taking 46...
Chancellor did say it would take two parliaments.
They've still got to outline where that money's coming from. If you take £46 billion out of the national insurance fund,
when the position's out
of the national insurance
isn't
fund,
directly linked to pensions anymore.
But it is legally ring-fenced to pay for pensions.
The link is gone though, so it is.
No, it's still legally ring-fenced in the Social Security Act from the early 1990s. That money goes to pay for pensions.
Was very clear about that the other day. This is absolute nonsense.
So that 46 billion, where is that money coming
we
from?
Know that
now, if it's not going to be a cut to the state pension, and it's not going to be increasing the retirement age, which to be fair, the government have ruled out both of those. Then, if it's merging national insurance and income tax, that means pensioners being taxed double. That's why Nigel Lawson ruled this out in the mid-80s.
And it's very clear that I understand that Jonathan is really worried that we're cutting taxes on working people. This is a progressive tax cut. This is cutting
25 tax rises.
This is a tax cut for people of working age. In the old days, the Labour Party used to stand up for working people. It doesn't do that anymore. It's not interested in cutting taxes.
Sun readers are getting absolutely squeezed till the pipsqueak under this law.
Why won't you back it, Jonathan? Why don't you want to remove taxes for working people?
We did back the national insurance.
No, why won't you back our pledge in the long term?
Because I tell you what, because we don't play fast and loose with the public finances like your party does.
Jonathan,
because that sends mortgages soaring, and the Sun readers are paying more and more mortgage because of you and your policies. The mortgage rising, tax increasing, NHS cutting. Tory party. That's what this was.
When you were a special advisor in the last Labour government, right, you left us with the biggest, with 11% of the entire country's GDP as a budget deficit, right? You sold the gold, you sold us down the blooming river, right? You lot love to talk about austerity. There's only one reason that happened. That's because you
everyone's paying more on the mortgage because of this. The mortgage raising Tory.
All right, here we go. Isn't it now time to start being a little bit clearer on some policies that the Labour Party are actually going to do? You know, we talk about your big missions and your big themes, but really, every time Sir Keir Starmer seems to get really pinned down on an issue now, which he doesn't really want to talk about, he wants to talk about the big picture. I totally understand that. You're 20 points ahead. But isn't it now fair to voters and our readers to really start being honest what you're actually going to do about immigration, what you're actually going to do about defence? Take the Rwanda thing. You know, we read from Andrew Marr that Labour are now considering keeping Rwanda. Is that something you?
No, that's absolutely not true.
But even as a stopgap until your own
No. We've
plan?
No.
So day one, you ground the flag.
Because just before we get into the policy discussion, I just want to say, look, these are good results for Labour. There's momentum behind us. However, I do genuinely think that the next general election is very, very competitive, right? The Conservative Party is the most successful election-winning party in the Western world, right? And if people want to turn the page, if people want change after 14 years, they're going to have to vote Labour at that next general election. We're not complacent. We're still fighting for every vote. And we do believe that this next general election is incredibly competitive. But on the policy, in terms of the policy, no, we don't think the Rwanda scheme is going to work.
So we don't think even if there are planes leaving on a regular basis by the time the election comes?
Acting as a deterrent. I mean, the legislation has gone through. We had over 700 people coming on a boat on Wednesday. We don't believe it's an effective deterrent. The way to tackle this issue is to work internationally, is our view, which is why we want to cooperate internationally. It's why we want to put more investment.
Do you not think the government has been trying to do that already?
Well, no, I don't actually. I don't think they've remotely been doing that.
Claptrap, Jonathan. You know, we've been...
Just give me one second just on this issue. On Rwanda, you say, you know, the people close to Keir Starmer briefing eminent political journalists of his generation, Andrew Marr, saying one thing, saying that you might not immediately ground the planes. You're saying that's completely wrong.
No.
Day one, Labour government.
No, we are not sticking with that scheme, and we're going to use the money that we would save, which is costing us what, £500 million? It'd actually be cheaper to put all these people up in the Paris Ritz.
Yeah, I mean,
well, 99%.
£6 billion a year. It's £8 billion a year hotel bill. If we're talking about hotels, you've got to have something to solve that. And shout and stop the gangs.
But this scheme does not help. Will do nothing. So
Rwanda, day one,
so it's
gone.
But it's 1%.
Gone.
It does not. 99% of asylum.
Will you grab the planes on day one then?
No, we are not sticking with that scheme. I'm going to put the money.
Even if there are planes leaving on a regular basis,
we are not sticking with the Rwanda scheme. We are going to put that money into security and policing and use terrorist-style laws to go after the gangs.
What about defence spending? You know, on day one of a Labour government, Keir Starmer will be taken aside and shown some of the most horrific intelligence and briefings you could possibly imagine. Yeah. You are going to have to seriously increase defence spending. The government have pledged to do that by 2030. You're not backing that pledge.
Well, we want to see defence spending rise to 2.5%. We don't believe it can be done by getting rid of civil servants. That's makey-uppy numbers. That wasn't the only.
That was part of year one's.
That's makey-uppy numbers in the government finances. It's why they've not put it through the OBR or any official body. It was completely makey-uppy. But we do believe that we've got to defend our nation. The army has been hollowed out, or the armed forces have hollowed out under the Tories, the smallest armed forces since Napoleonic times.
So
we are committed to getting to the 2.5%.
But when?
That's the same question.
One of the things we are going to do is going to have a proper review. We know this government has wasted 15 billion.
Former Defence Secretary, a guy, you know, Ben Wallace,
across
the House.
We've seen in those 14 years, you lot waste £15 billion on procurement in defence, completely
kicking the can down the road.
I mean, Jonathan, I used to sit on the Public Accounts Committee. Your record on defence...
Kicking the can down the road.
£15 billion they lost.
We need kicking the can down the road with another defence review. You know, that's just delaying the whole thing by 18 months.
No, we want to get to 2.5%. We're going to look at the books properly and carefully. We're not going to when you're talking about the defence of this country and our people who serve this country and put their lives on the line, we're not going to make commitments to them based on makey-uppy numbers like this lot.
Not making any commitments.
Richard, I'll come back to you in a sec. Just one more thing. You know, the massive amounts of out-of-work rates since the pandemic. The growing size of the benefit bill. Again, Labour incredibly woolly about it.
No, I don't think we are. In fact, if you remember when I did the work and pensions brief, I was speaking out about this quite regularly, about the increasing numbers of people who have been forced out of work.
You're very good at identifying the problems, though, but what is a Labour solution? That's what I think the voters want to know now.
We put forward a series of welfare reforms that the government then adopted my welfare reforms and are implementing some of the proposals that we put forward. Some of the other things you've got to do, you've got to fix the way mental health services operate, because increasing numbers of people are out of work for reasons of mental health. So you've got to make sure that people get into proper mental health services. But yes, you do have to look at the assessment regime. So we're going to look at these proposals for personal independence payments. Remember, though, personal independence payments isn't about people necessarily being out of work. That's a separate benefit.
But people who are disabled get benefits even if they are.
But we do want to get people into work, and we do have to take action to bring this benefit.
So you agree there needs to be some sort of grading level within the payment system that currently...
You've definitely got to put in place a series of welfare reforms to help people return to work. People should work if they're able to work. That is something I always said when I was a shadow working pensioners. I've got some criticism, by the way, from not from this newspaper, but from other sort of columnists on other newspapers. I got some criticism for saying that. Yeah. But I believe people who should work, who can work, here, I'm afraid, should work, and we would introduce welfare reforms to support people into work.
Richard, benefit reform, defence spending, Rwanda. You know, the government have been on a policy blitz in the last 14 days, but the results are showing it's not working. What on earth can Rishi Sunak do to turn this around?
Look, and you're quite right, you know, but a lot of this is building on stuff we've done over the long term. One of the big changes that we did when we came into office was adopt universal credit, which stopped people And before then, people couldn't do more than 16 hours a week in many, many jobs without just totally losing huge quantities of benefits. Now we've got a position where our benefits reforms, which I'm not sure whether Jonathan and the Labour are still back in terms of universal credit, we will always ensure that work pays. We've still got to do more on that. We've actually saw 100,000 people a year come off between 2010 and the start of the pandemic from some of those longer-term sickness benefits. We saw a big spike with the pandemic. It's a right that we start to look and address that now. In answer to your sort of direct question, we have started to put out policies there on defence spending. We have on welfare reform, and obviously we've got this big dividing line with
What have you
Labour
got left in the locker?
on immigration. No, there's always more to go. I can't obviously talk about future policy that we're going to do, but I think we've got a real key dividing line starting to open up between ourselves and Labour at the moment. We've been very clear where we want to go on taxation of working people. We've been very clear where we've gone to defence spending. Jonathan talks a good game, but he's not prepared to put any numbers behind
It looks like you're drawing up a manifesto there in terms of dividing lines and big policies.
Well, we've got.
When we're thinking July.
Well, we have. I think we've got time to go. Yeah, right. And there's obviously we're building that big policy platform to build on what we've done over the last 14 years, but what we're going to do in the future as well. And some of those changes, I think Jonathan, in his heart of hearts, would back. Now, which he probably opposed at the time, like our changes to the education system, where we've actually seen England really rise up some of the international rankings, like our changes in schools, where we've seen now from 2/3 of kids attending good or outstanding schools in 2010, that's at 90% today. And it's in stark contrast to actually what's happened in other parts of the UK, like in Wales, where Labour have been charged for 25 years and things have gone backwards in a lot of cases.
You're both quite similar guys. You're creatures of the political world. You've done similar jobs. Johnny, you were doing a sort of similar job to Richard.
Than me.
Yeah.
Bloody hellfire, where are you taking this?
In the spirit of never mind the ballots, harmony. I mean, we've had some testy moments so far, but what piece of advice would you give Richard about how about where they are in the world? And Richard, what piece of advice would
How's
you
your
give?
search for a seat going?
Oh, well, that's a good question. I'm still trying to find
Yeah,
where
Is it true that you're going for that filed seat? That's the Westminster
Well,
Room, where you got rid of that Tory MP who got himself into a load of bother. Is it being lined up for you?
It's certainly not being lined up for me.
Really?
If I listen to every rumour, I've been told I'm going
It must
for
be
about,
quite tricky though,
about
being the party
20
chairman,
seats.
trying to get a seat there. I mean, it's
Well,
if anyone can stitch it up, it's you,
my
right?
job is to go around the country, support our candidates.
Isn't
like I
your
have
Tory
been
party
over the
membership
last
in
few
Lancashire?
months. Yeah, I've always been a member since I joined.
So
in
Pulton the Filed
1999.
up the road from where you live?
We'll have to see what happens. Who knows?
Richard, your advice for Jonathan?
I would say to Jonathan, Jonathan's actually, he's always, tried to be on the moderate wing of the Labour Party. When he's,
damning with faint praise, I think
he really has tried. I think that the truth is that Labour need to have really properly worked through proposals, right, if they're going to be taken seriously by the British people on taxation and on defence.
We are being taken seriously.
I would just.
Look what's just happened in Blackpool.
I would just a second, Jonathan. I didn't interrupt.
Yeah, you did.
Not in a snarky way like you are. I was being nice, right? I think genuinely, when it comes down to it, I think people want to see lower taxes on working people. I understand why the Labour Party are trying to do this.
Over 40
I understand. Yeah, well, we've had to pay to support people during the pandemic and through the energy price crisis as well, which is, and I think you've broadly supported us doing that, right? But we will need to see taxes cut. We're cutting taxes for people in work, and we're also protecting pensioner incomes. I think if Labour were serious about working Britain, as I think they want to be, that's where I'd be going as well.
People are worse off under the Tories, and they pay more on their mortgage.
All right, we are at time. Gentlemen, go to bed. Get some sleep. Thank you for coming. Come back and see Never Mind the Ballot soon. And we'll carry on this fight. Thank you both, Jonathan Ashworth, Richard Holden. That's it for today's special episode. This was Never Mind the Ballots. See you next time.